Let us begin with an uncomfortable but life-changing truth. Discipline begins where excuses end. Every dream you have ever laid, every goal you have postponed, every commitment you have broken has usually been protected by a reason that sounded valid in the moment. I'm tired. I'll start tomorrow. This isn't the right time. I'm not ready yet. Excuses are clever. They disguise themselves as logic. They sound responsible. They feel justified, but they quietly keep you stuck. And here is the critical distinction. There is a difference between a real limitation and a habitual excuse. A limitation requires strategy. An excuse requires discipline. When you decide to discipline your life, the first battle you fight is not with the world, it is with your own internal negotiations, because the mind is designed to seek comfort, to avoid discomfort, to protect you from effort. Growth, however, demands discomfort. So the moment you say, I will change, your comfort zone pushes back. That resistance is normal. It does not mean you are incapable. It means you are stretching beyond familiarity. Discipline begins the moment you act despite that resistance. It begins when you recognize the excuse, acknowledge it, and move forward anyway, not because you feel powerful, but because you choose to be responsible. Excuses keep you emotionally safe. Discipline makes you mentally strong, and strength is built through repeated confrontation with resistance. Think about it. The difference between someone who remains average and someone who transforms their life is rarely intelligence, talent, or luck. It is the refusal to entertain excuses repeatedly. The disciplined individual does not eliminate discomfort. They eliminate negotiation. They do not ask, do I feel like it? They ask, did I commit to it? That shift removes emotional dependency from action. When you stop negotiating with your own potential, you begin building authority within yourself. Authority means your decisions carry weight. It means when you say you will wake up early, you wake up early. When you say you will complete a task, you complete it. When you say you will improve, you take action immediately. Each time you override an excuse, you reinforce self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of discipline. Without it, you dot your own word with it. You become internally powerful. Now understand this clearly. Ending excuses does not mean ignoring reality. There will be legitimate obstacles, real fatigue, genuine responsibilities, unexpected challenges. Discipline does not deny reality, it adapts to it. But what it does not tolerate is habitual avoidance disguised as circumstance. It does not allow temporary discomfort to dictate permanent outcomes. When you begin forcing yourself to discipline your life, you are essentially declaring, my future is more important than my excuses. And that declaration changes your standards, because standards define behavior more than feelings ever will. If your standard is convenience, excuses win. If your standard is growth, discipline wins. And the more consistently you choose discipline, the weaker your excuses become. Excuses thrive on repetition, but so does strength. The first time you push through resistance, it feels uncomfortable. The second time, slightly easier. By the 10th time, it becomes part of who you are. This is how discipline is formed, not through one dramatic act, but through repeated decisions to act beyond excuses. You are not waiting to become disciplined. You become disciplined by acting against excuses repeatedly. That is the process, and the moment you stop blaming circumstances, timing, mood, or fear, you take back control over your time, your effort, your direction, because discipline is ownership of your habits, ownership of your outcomes, ownership of your growth. And once you accept full ownership, excuses lose their power. So if you want to discipline your life, start here. Identify the excuses that repeat in your routine, confront them without judgment, and choose action anyway. Because discipline does not begin with motivation. It begins the moment you decide that excuses are no longer an option. Discipline is not simply about willpower or forcing yourself to act in isolated moments of effort. It is about creating a life structured in a way that naturally supports consistency and reduces resistance. Most people fail at discipline not because they lack determination, but because their environment, routines, and systems are misaligned with their goals. Your life is full of invisible nudges, cues, and habits that either work for you or against you. A cluttered workspace, an unpredictable schedule, distractions from devices, unplanned commitments, or chaotic surroundings quietly sap energy and invite procrastination. True discipline begins with intentional design. You must shape your environment, your routines, and your daily practices to make disciplined action easier and excuses harder. If you want to wake up early, place your alarm clock across the room and prepare your morning routine the night before. If you want to eat healthier, stock your kitchen with nutritious foods and remove the options that tempt you toward poor choices. Small adjustments in your environment compound over time to create massive results. Structure also involves scheduling and planning. When your day is chaotic and unplanned, decision fatigue sets in, and each choice becomes a negotiation with yourself. You start asking, do I feel like doing this? Motivation fails here, and inconsistency thrives. A disciplined life requires pre-decided actions, standards, and routines. When your priorities are clearly mapped, your energy is focused on execution rather than deliberation. Another layer of structure is social alignment. The people you surround yourself with influence your habits far more than you realize. Being around individuals who normalize procrastination, excuse making, or distraction makes self-discipline far harder. Conversely, a supportive circle that models consistency, growth, and accountability reinforces your own standards, making disciplined action natural rather than a struggle. Structure also includes clear goals broken into actionable steps. Big ambitions without a roadmap overwhelm the mind and invite avoidance. The most disciplined people operate from clarity, not just motivation. They break goals into measurable, achievable tasks and integrate them into routines. Over time, these small, structured steps transform into habits that no longer require willpower to maintain. Discipline thrives in a life designed for it. It is not about fighting against chaos every day. It is about removing unnecessary friction, designing your surroundings, and creating systems that automatically nudge you towards success. The more your life is intentionally structured to support your goals, the less you rely on emotion, the less excuses can gain ground, and the more natural, consistent action becomes. Remember, structure is not restriction, it is liberation. It frees your mind from endless negotiation and allows you to act in alignment with your values and priorities. The disciplined person does not rely on bursts of inspiration. They rely on the systems, habits, and environment they have intentionally created. Each small adjustment, every planned routine, every removed distraction, every clear priority builds a framework where discipline is inevitable. So, if you want to force yourself to discipline your life, start by designing it intentionally. Examine your environment, schedule relationships and daily systems, remove what holds you back, add what supports your growth, and create a life where acting discipline is not a struggle, but the default. In structured living, discipline becomes effortless, and your capacity for achievement expands beyond what motivation alone could ever provide. Discipline is not formed through dramatic bursts of effort or moments of extreme willpower. It is forged in the quiet repetition of small, consistent actions. Most people misunderstand discipline, thinking it comes from a single day of extreme focus, a long workout, or a marathon session of productivity. They rely on motivation and intensity, hoping that one powerful push will carry them to success. But motivation is fleeting, intensity burns out, and without repetition, results vanish as quickly as they appear. The secret to lasting discipline is cumulative effort. Small actions, repeated consistently over time, compound to produce results far greater than any isolated effort could achieve. Making your bed every morning, committing to 10 minutes of focused work before checking your phone, journaling 1 page a day, or taking a brief walk for exercise. These tiny acts seem trivial alone, but repeated daily, they reinforce identity and behavior. Consistency builds habit, and habit builds identity. Each day you follow through on a small commitment, you are sending a signal to yourself. I am reliable, I am capable, I honor my word. These signals accumulate, shaping your self-perception and reinforcing your ability to act even when you do not feel motivated. Motivation is the spark, consistency is the fire that keeps burning. Another critical aspect is momentum. Small, consistent actions generate forward motion. The first few days may feel challenging because you are resisting old habits and comfort. But as repetition continues, your actions become easier, and each completed task creates psychological momentum that makes the next step more automatic. Momentum turns effort into routine, and routine reduces reliance on fleeting willpower. Small actions also reduce overwhelm. Massive goals can paralyze because the mind sees a huge task and automatically resists. Breaking goals into micro actions removes this friction. Writing a page a day toward a book, running 5 minutes daily before building up, or saving a small amount each week toward a financial goal. These manageable steps are sustainable and prevent the mental fatigue that comes from attempting monumental efforts all at once. Importantly, repeated small actions create internal proof of your capability. When you consistently act in alignment with your intentions, you reinforce trust in yourself. You stop needing external validation because each small success is evidence of your identity as a disciplined person. Over time, these small wins accumulate into a powerful sense of self-efficacy, and your actions become driven by identity rather than fleeting emotion. Finally, small, consistent actions teach patience and resilience. Transformation does not happen overnight. It happens in the quiet, ordinary moments of persistence. They train you to continue even when results are not immediately visible, building the mental toughness required for long-term achievement. Discipline becomes embedded in your life, not as an occasional act of heroism, but as a natural, ongoing pattern. So, if you want to force yourself to discipline your life, focus on starting small, acting consistently, and repeating without exception. Discipline is less about intensity and more about persistence. Each small action is a brick in the foundation of a disciplined life, and over time, these bricks construct the structure that will carry your ambitions into reality. Consistency beats intensity, repetition beats motivation, and small actions compound into extraordinary results. One of the most powerful, yet often overlooked, principles of discipline is the role your environment plays in shaping your behavior. Discipline is not simply a matter of willpower. It is heavily influenced by the physical, social, and digital spaces in which you live. Most people struggle with consistency not because they lack motivation or talent, but because their surroundings constantly invite distraction, temptation, and procrastination. Every environment carries cues that trigger automatic behavior: a cluttered workspace, an overflowing inbox, noisy rooms, social media notifications, or unhealthy food in plain sight. All of these seemingly small factors drain focus and weaken resolve. On the other hand, a clean desk, a scheduled routine, supportive relationships, and systems designed to minimize friction naturally promote consistency and disciplined action. Controlling your environment means intentionally shaping it to reduce barriers to your goals and increase the likelihood of success. If your aim is to wake up early and exercise, place your alarm clock across the room, lay out your workout clothes the night before, and remove excuses before the day even begins. If your goal is productivity, eliminate distractions by turning off notifications, decluttering your workspace, and scheduling focus blocks in advance. The easier you make the right action, the more likely it becomes automatic. Social environment is equally critical. The people you interact with influence your standards, habits, and even your self-image. Surrounding yourself with individuals who normalize excuses, procrastination, or negative thinking erodes discipline. Conversely, spending time with people who model consistency, accountability, and growth reinforces your own commitment to disciplined action. Social cues act like invisible mentors, nudging you toward or away from your desired behavior. Another aspect of environment is digital consumption. Constant exposure to entertainment, social media, or news can fragment attention and reduce focus. A disciplined life requires intentional choices about what enters your mind. Curate what you consume, prioritize sources that inspire growth, and schedule intentional periods for leisure rather than allowing digital distractions to control your time. By controlling your environment, you remove unnecessary reliance on willpower. Willpower is finite and can be depleted by stress, fatigue, or emotional strain. When your surroundings are aligned with your goals, discipline becomes easier, more sustainable, and less emotionally taxing. Instead of constantly negotiating with yourself, the environment nudges you automatically toward the actions that align your long-term objectives. Environment also reinforces identity. When your surroundings reflect your aspirations, your actions naturally align with your desired self. Clean, organized, and purpose-driven spaces encourage mental clarity, focused routines, and a sense of professionalism or personal accountability. Conversely, chaotic and distracting environments invite indecision, delay, and compromise, reinforcing old patterns of inconsistency. Ultimately, discipline is as much about designing your life as it is about inner strength. You cannot rely solely on motivation because it fluctuates, and you cannot depend entirely on willpower because it is limited. But when your environment is structured to support consistent action, discipline becomes almost effortless and habits form naturally. To force yourself to discipline your life, start by taking a close look at your environment. Remove what undermines your goals, add what supports them, and intentionally design spaces that make disciplined action simple and automatic. Control over your environment is control over your behavior, and that control is the secret weapon for sustaining consistency, building habits, and achieving the life you want. The most powerful lesson in discipline is this: lasting change begins with identity, not action. Most people approach discipline by focusing on what they need to do. I will wake up early. I will exercise. I will write daily. But behavior alone rarely produces permanent results. Without a shift in identity, habits remain fragile, dependent on motivation, and prone to collapse at the first challenge. True transformation starts with the question, who do I want to become? The answer to that question shapes every choice you make. When you see yourself as a disciplined person, a consistent worker, or a committed individual, your actions naturally align with that self-perception. You don't need to force yourself every day. Your behavior reflects who you are becoming. Identity drives action far more reliably than willpower or inspiration ever could. Small, consistent actions serve as evidence of this new identity. When you follow through on commitments, even in minor ways, you reinforce your self-image. Completing a workout despite fatigue, finishing a task you procrastinated on, or keeping a promise to yourself, these are all proof points that strengthen your belief in your disciplined identity. Over time, this self-reinforcement makes discipline automatic rather than a constant struggle. Identity-based discipline also creates resilience. When motivation wanes, when circumstances challenge you, or when obstacles arise, you act according to who you are rather than how you feel. The disciplined person continues to write, exercise, or take action not because they feel like it, but because it is part of their identity. Resistance becomes manageable, and consistency persists even under difficult conditions. This approach also prevents the burnout associated with relying solely on external goals. Goals are outcomes, but identity is enduring. Focusing only on what you want to achieve can lead to frustration when results are delayed. Focusing on who you are becoming creates a stable internal compass. The disciplined individual does not abandon their path because the goal seems distant or motivation is low. They stay on course because the behavior reflects their identity. This 7-day discipline reset works precisely because it begins to shift identity. 7 days of consistent action is long enough to start convincing your mind, I am someone who follows through. I am someone committed. I am someone disciplined. This identity shift, even if small, compounds over time. Each repeated act reinforces the belief. And as belief strengthens, actions require less conscious effort and become part of your default behavior. Finally, identity-based discipline aligns with long-term success. When your self-image matches the life you aspire to live, your habits, decisions, and routines naturally support that vision. You stop negotiating with yourself daily, you stop relying on fleeting motivation, and you stop procrastinating. Every choice reinforces your identity, and every day you live in alignment with that identity brings you closer to the life you desire. To force yourself to discipline your life, start by deciding who you want to become. Let that identity guide your small daily actions. Repeat them consistently. Reinforce your self-image with evidence through action. Over time, the person you see in the mirror and the person taking action become one. Habits follow identity, not the other way around. And when identity is solid, discipline becomes effortless, natural, and unstoppable. Discipline is not a temporary effort, a burst of motivation, or a fleeting feeling of inspiration. It is a commitment to yourself, a deliberate choice to take control of your life, and a consistent practice that builds strength, resilience, and self-trust over time. Waiting for motivation or perfect circumstances only delays your growth. Real transformation Transformation begins when you force yourself to act, even when it feels uncomfortable. Through the principles we've explored, ending excuses, structuring your environment, taking small consistent actions, designing supportive surroundings, and shifting your identity, you begin to build a life where discipline is no longer optional but natural. Discipline is the bridge between where you are today and the person you aspire to become. It turns intention into action, goals into habits, and dreams into reality. This 7-day discipline reset is not a shortcut. It is a framework to help you start building momentum, to experience firsthand how structure, action, and identity shape your life. Each day of commitment, no matter how small, strengthens your self-respect, reinforces your identity, and compounds into lasting habits that carry you towards success. Ultimately, discipline is freedom. It liberates you from procrastination, self-doubt, and chaos. It gives you control over your choices, your time, and your future. By committing to discipline, you are not restricting yourself. You are creating the space to live intentionally, grow consistently, and achieve what you once thought impossible. The choice is simple. You can wait for motivation, or you can force yourself to discipline your life, take consistent action, and shape the identity of the person you are meant to become. Your best self is waiting, and discipline is the key to unlocking it.